Hey, welcome back. And this week we're going to talk, this is the second part of storytelling. We're going to start talking about color.
So last time we talked about story, it was black and white, and because story is such a big subject that we decided to split it in two. So this week we'll talk about how we can tell a story, specifically using color.
Mm-hmm. And color is a vast subject, obviously. It's one of these things that we're going to start to dip into. Hopefully out of this you can start to develop an interest in it and be curious about it and continue the journey of figuring out and learning more about color and storytelling.
Yeah, color, we always said it's a very subjective thing, but how we can, use this subjective kind of tool into your advantage so that you can affect your audience most effectively. So let's find out.
Great, let's get started.
We're going to talk about color.
Yeah.
Color storytelling using color and light.
Yeah, and color can be so much. It's such a diverse tool. It does a lot of things. As always, we're going to try to simplify and talk about some big ideas.
Yep.
So I think it's always important to make your color mean something. In other words, of course, you can always be arbitrary about your color, and there's nothing wrong with that. But also, I think in what we do, we've always tried to make color serve a purpose in terms of telling a story.
Well, in other words, it's a strong, it's a pretty strong device that you can use to enhance your storytelling. You don't have to use it, but it's there for you to use if it's, used properly.
Right, absolutely. And, this is very broad, but we simplified it into 3 different ideas. And we'll talk about these things and look at some examples. But I think a lot of times people use color as symbolism. The color red means this in the film. It can also help to identify a character or a place.
Yep.
And also, I think most importantly, color is such a subjective thing, but when used correctly, it can really help establish a tone or a mood. Overall. So let's look at some films.
Yep. Nice.
So this is Wizard of Oz, and I think this is a very simple, easy thing that we all see, and we've seen it used in quite a few films, where you open on the film in these like sepia tones or monochromatic sort of thing, and Dorothy gets swept up into this tornado and dropped into the land of Oz, where it's colorful. Clearly, she's gone through this transition and is in this other world. And I think this was a huge deal back then, obviously, because it was one of the first Technicolor films, and color is really being celebrated and used effectively as a tool here. It's almost, you start in that old world where a lot of films before then were black and white. So this feels very natural to be starting a sepia-toned thing, but how magical that must have been to suddenly go into this world of color.
That's the choice they made. I'm so impressed, like if they had the medium to make everything color, they could have done that. But instead, because back then color was by itself was just significant,
special thing.
Yeah. And then they still decide to start with black and white. Just such a smart and very intelligent and choice.
So cool. And let's look a little even more. Like, I think it's the first time color is just a special thing. But I think too, what's great is in the film they actually use color as kind of a bit of an idea.
Yeah.
I read articles that said they chose this color green, which is so iconic for this witch, but it's not like witches before this point were known to be green.
Yeah.
But that it was just a color that showed up really well on film.
That particular Technicolor technology back then.
And I love that red kind of serves this purpose within the film. You see red quite a bit, and this kind of smoke that she comes out of in the beginning of the film, this hourglass that she uses, and of course the ruby slippers.
Yeah.
And another interesting little factoid about it was the fact that the same kind of sequins that are used on her shoes are used in the hourglass sort of thing, the sparkly kind of red. And here I think it's this kind of magical thing. It's this magical color almost.
Amazing.
that works really well. And this is another one of the early color films, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I think we look at this as a classic animation. Of course it is. But it's amazing how effectively they're using color. You can see on the left side of the frame the dwarves and Snow White amongst this kind of natural setting. There's a lot of these like earthy, neutral colors. There's a lot of color there, but it's very controlled in this little more of an earthy way, kind of representing the dwarves and you know, Snow White obviously almost talks with animals sort of thing. And then you have this like villain, or you think he's a villain, someone sent by the witch to basically take Snow White out. And he has a red feather in his cap, this kind of blood red feather. And we can see on the right side, you know, it's this identifying color. Even the vultures that are kind of her vulture, pet vultures almost, I guess, have these really bright red beaks. And of course there's the apple.
Yeah, ultimately it's driven by the color of the apple, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I just love how effective, how subtle. You know, it's not like you need to know all these things, but I do think throughout watching the film you do feel these things.
That's the key, right? Like we don't necessarily tell people literally, you know, color red is this, the blue is that. You know, it's more about the feel that they're trying to convey and enhance their storytelling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
And this is Black Narcissus by Powell and Pressburger. And what's interesting about that is that Powell and Pressburger actually studied quite a bit Snow White in terms of their art direction and how to effectively use color. In this film, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's a beautifully shot film and beautiful, effective use of color. But you open the film in this kind of, I guess, a nunnery kind of thing, in these real white neutrals. And it's kind of in the East and in Asia. And as Eastern influence and Eastern mysticism kind of begins to influence one of the nuns, color begins to get introduced. So kids from the local town come in and they're bringing all these colors. And she, for the first time, you see this kind of red lipstick go on her lips. And that color red becomes very significant in terms of taking over her persona and who she is. Ultimately, even I love how pushed the red beneath her eyes, you know, really pronounces that idea, and then eventually to the lighting getting this kind of redness.
Even look at the lighting on the shot of her with the big lips, you know, red lipsticks. That the focal point is that color, not her face. You know, I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool. And of course, I think this is, in recent years, a lot of people talk about this, kind of an idea of symbolism, the color red, M. Night Shyamalan's Sixth Sense. He uses the color red to signify when, I guess, like a dead person is present. And, you know, I gotta say, I didn't notice that the first I don't know anybody that really noticed that the first time they watched it. But it is like an interesting thing to me because it helped to drive choices.
Yeah, totally.
When making the film, when putting these things together. I think one important thing about making symbolism like this is the consistency of it.
Exactly.
Now it means that you can't go around sticking a red lamp in the back, you know, of a scene. It means that the effective use of this symbol means that you really have to reserve it. And it's actually, I mean, we've done that in films we've worked on. I know you have kind of pushed for things like that, and it can't just be loosey-goosey. In one scene it means this, and the next scene it doesn't. You have to stay consistent, and it limits your choices as you move on.
You know, one thing that I'm always asked is, you know, if there's like a color symbology that's universal, and the answer is of course no. We all grew up with, you know, in a different culture, different environments where color means certain colors mean something different from what other people might have thought of the same color. And it's important that you don't really try to think about the global kind of a symbology of colors. It's more about being consistent. Can you actually make it mean something in the movie, in your movie?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like this film was designed for people to go back for a second viewing. And in that way, I think it's a really brilliant, put together little idea.
Yeah, there was one scene, you know, it's not in this example, but one scene of this lady who is, in this bright red dress among, in a funeral kind of gathering, and a lot of people are wearing like a earthy tone or the neutral kind of clothing, and then she has the red roses, there's something about her, even though she's not a significant character, but it turns out in the end she actually was the one who killed her husband or something like that, right? So it's one of those things that you notice and you feel without really knowing what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.